Arbor Gold is a fine, golden-colored white wine from the Arbor, an island in the Reach well known for making the best quality wine in Westeros or Essos. The Reach is known for their abundance in all types of agriculture. From wheat to fruit, the land is most fertile. The wines from the Arbor are highly regarded and expensive, typically consumed by royalty or the very wealthy. No other place in Westeros or Essos is regarded for producing finer red or white wines than the Arbor. The theme of Lies and Arbor Gold is a well-known hidden motif throughout the story. It is the idea that when our characters are drinking this fine wine, it is symbolically used to indicate lies, manipulation, or deception. We would like to go over some occurrences within the text that provide examples of lies and deception while drinking this appeasing white wine. We would like to bring attention to another subtle theme George has used similarly to the Lies and Arbor Gold motif. You may notice within the storyline many instances of pies being used as a means of action. There are several instances of pies being used as a tool of vengeance, malice, and of heavy intent. Whether blatant or hidden, we have all seen several examples of this and should be wary of any savory pie we might be served in this story. We will be making a tasty Frey Pie, which is a slow-cooked storyline with layers of treachery that leaves us with a savory and satisfying taste in our mouths. We will discuss the Freys' recipe for disaster, the Manderly's appetite for revenge, Cersei's healthy appetite for whining and weaving, and Sansa learning her limits with Arbor Gold used as a symbolic tool for recognizing deception within the story. We are also given a new treat in Fire and Blood that further drives this theory home. There are even instances of cross-use of these two literary tools, which makes this dense and delicious to examine. Let's take a look. One of the first instances we see Arbor Gold used as a tool is for the arrangement and consummation of Sansa and Tyrion's marriage. In A Storm of Swords, we attend Tyrion's first small council meeting since his near-death injury at the Battle of the Blackwater. After dividing up lands and titles of the traitorous lords and knights that were loyal to Stannis Baratheon, we receive this from Paxter Redwine, Lord of the Arbor.
He pronounced himself well satisfied and suggested that they send for a cask of Arbor Gold to toast good King Joffrey in his wise and benevolent hand.
Shortly after, the meeting is dismissed by Tywin Lannister, who requests to speak with his children and his brother Kevan. They have received word of a Tyrell plan to spirit Sansa Stark away to Highgarden and there marry her to Willis Tyrell, the heir to Highgarden. Tywin suggests Cersei should marry Willis instead before Sansa gets a chance. Tywin tells Cersei that she needs to marry again to quash any further rumors of incest. Cersei is of course livid and refuses, and leaves angrily to contemplate her options. Tywin then informs Tyrion that he will marry Sansa instead. She's an important piece to play, and Tyrion would potentially inherit Winterfell someday. Tyrion is quite hesitant and doesn't want to torture Sansa any further than she's already suffered, but Tywin reminds him that that would only happen if Tyrion were planning to treat her cruelly. Tyrion reluctantly agrees to it. Sansa is not even told she will be marrying Tyrion until she is dressed and donned in a white marriage cloak with a gray direwolf emblazoned on it. Cersei has a beautiful new dress commissioned for her, which Sansa spends the entire previous chapter fawning over without a question as to why. The news is shocking, and Sansa does her best to remain composed. Tyrion feels incredibly guilty for all that Sansa has already suffered, and marrying him would be the icing on the cake. After the wedding and reception, the new couple head to a special bedroom arranged for them in the Hand's Tower. Both seem determined to go through with the consummation, despite Tyrion feeling guilty and uncomfortable with Sansa's age, and Sansa despising Tyrion for his looks and his family.
There is a flagon of good Arbor Gold on the sideboard, Sansa. Would you be so kind as to pour me a cup? Is that wise, my lord? Nothing was ever wiser. I'm not truly drunk, you see, but I mean to be. Sansa filled a goblet for each of them. It will be easier if I'm drunk as well.
In the end, the couple hold off on doing the deed until both consent to it. They create their first bond over this secret, and the world believes the marriage was consummated. In A Feast for Crows, we see from Cersei's 4th chapter a plethora of lies and deception. There's a lot of detail in this chapter that on a quick read might seem like a lot of boring story filler, but is actually a rich sample platter with deception within every subject discussed. The chapter begins with 3 common men bringing a dead dwarf's head to Cersei and presenting it as Tyrion's. Cersei has offered a lordship to whoever brings her Tyrion's head. This head is obviously not Tyrion's, as it still has a nose, but at least it is the right size this time. Cersei recalls the last head she received, which was just an ugly child's head. Once again, Qyburn is given the head for his studies. On their way to the meeting, Cersei asks about a special project she has Qyburn attending to which he apologizes for the time it's taking, but the head his beetles are consuming is quite large. This particular head is to be sent to Prince Doran as Gregor Clegane's head in retribution for Elia and Oberyn's deaths. Kingsguard Balon Swan is taking the head to Prince Doran in Dorne, along with another deceptive task that Cersei has set him to. The task is to return Myrcella to King's Landing along with a party of people. An invitation is sent to welcome Prince Trystane to court, Myrcella's betrothed, as well as an open seat on the small council to bring Dorne into the fold. While they travel to King's Landing, Cersei arranged for an ambush on their party and for Sir Balon to claim he saw Tyrion as one of the attackers. The plan is for Prince Trystane to be killed in the ambush. We do later find out that Prince Doran gains word of this ambush and leads Balon away to seek out Sir Gerald Dane, Darkstar himself, for attacking Myrcella and for the death of his Kingsguard brother, Aerys Oakheart, in the Folly Dornish coup led by Arianne Martell in attempt to raise Myrcella as queen. We attend Cersei's first small council meeting since Tywin was killed. Present is Grand Maester Pycelle, Arain Waters, Giles Rosby, Orton Merryweather, Harry Swift, and Qyburn, Cersei's new small council. They start the meeting with Orton Merryweather offering some wine.
We have Dornish Red and Arbor Gold, and a fine, sweet Hippocras from Highgarden. The gold, I think. I find Dornish wines as sour as the Dornish.
Cersei spends a good amount of time thinking about Arain Waters, her new Grand Admiral, a title formerly known as a Master of Ships, and how attractive she finds him. He is young and handsome, with similar looks to Rhaegar Targaryen, with silver blonde hair. The Valyrians are also of Valyrian descent, so many still have blonde hair of the Valyrians of old. Cersei is quite sure that he's enamored with her, and she can use that to her advantage. Arain is the bastard of Driftmark, which is the seat of House Valyrian. The Valyrians originally fought for Stannis Baratheon in the War of the Five Kings, but Arain was captured on the Blackwater and bent his knee to Joffrey. He was pardoned, and despite Jaime's reasonable disapproval, Cersei appointed him to the small council. One of the first things addressed in the meeting is the royal fleet. Fewer than a dozen ships survived on the Battle of the Blackwater, and Arain recommends building 10 Drummonds to start. The council discusses the cost, but Cersei says no matter. She plans to put off payment to the Iron Bank of Braavos for debts owed with flippant disregard. Pycelle strongly advises against it, but Cersei says,
The Iron Bank remains on Braavos across the narrow sea. The Iron Bank will have its due when I say so. Until then, they shall sit patiently.
They also consider using the Ironborn ships to bulk up the royal fleet. The Ironborn have requested domain over the north, as they have invaded Torrhen Square and hold Deepwood Motte and Moat Cailin. Bruce Bolton was already granted as Warden of the North for their part in the Red Wedding. Balon Greyjoy is recently dead and has no male heirs, as they have heard that Theon is dead in Winterfell. It's a moment ripe for the taking. They could use the Ironborn ships for their own ends, as well as claim the North from the Northmen. But Cersei does not want to give up half of her kingdom to the Ironborn and chooses to wait for the new ships. She advises Arryn to go forward with the construction of the new dramens.
I do not propose to climb in bed with that sorry pack of squids. Their time will come once we've dealt with Stannis.
This decision later comes back to bite Cersei when she herself is taken prisoner by the High Sparrow later in the story. Arryn steals the fleet of new ships while Cersei is imprisoned. She loses the chance with the Ironborn as well as her new ships to Arryn. It is speculated from Arianne's chapter in The Winds of Winter that he may be attempting to establish himself as a pirate king in the Stepstones with the newly constructed royal fleet. Another thing to consider, based on the show evidence, is that there is some foreshadowing in that statement alluding to a future Cersei-Euron alliance and potential marriage. Shout out to Grey Area for her research on Cersei and Euron as the future king and queen in King's Landing. That statement really seems to drive that idea home. Walder Frey wrote in regarding claims and rewards for loyalty to the crown. He complains of sparrows from the Riverlands spreading animosity for the Freys and their part in the Red Wedding, an offense to the gods. Some even whisper in wine sinks that the crown was complicit in the act of betrayal, of which Cersei adamantly denies. Qyburn suggests the crown may want to punish a few Freys for the crime to appease the people and the gods, but the council agrees Walder would never give up his own for that. They will pursue it once Walder is dead, which they believe shouldn't be in too terribly long since he's an old man. Lord Commander Jon Snow has written in response to the demand for oaths of fealty to the crown. Jon states that the Night's Watch takes no sides in the wars of the realm. Since the council knows Stannis has been at the Wall, they see it as the Night's Watch chose their side by offering Stannis food and shelter while he defended the Wall. Cersei doesn't understand why Catelyn didn't smother the bastard in his sleep, and now she's left to do it herself. The Watch is requesting men and arms, which Cersei is not inclined to offer, until Qyburn suggests they send 100 good men to secretly kill Jon Snow. Cersei loves it.
Perhaps he'll even thank me before the blade slides between his ribs.
The council discussed which Northmen are likely to declare loyalty to the crown over Stannis, especially since Jon Snow allowed the wildlings into the north. They expect the Umbers and Manderly's loyalty and have been in contact with Wyman Manderly. He has agreed to marry 2 of his granddaughters to Freys, despite his eldest son and heir being murdered at the Red Wedding. Wyman wrote to advise the crown that he has taken prisoner Sir Davos Seaworth, known as the Onion Knight and hand to King Stannis. Wyman will handle it however the crown advises. The council decides it's best for him to have his head cut off and be done with it. Wyman also reports he refuses to bend the knee until his heir Willis is returned to him.
He will be at Harrenhal if he's still alive. Gregor Clegane took him captive. The Mountain had not always been gentle with his prisoners, even those worth a goodly ransom. If he is dead, I suppose we'll need to send Lord Manderly the heads of those who killed him, with our most sincere apologies. If one head was enough to appease a Prince of Dorne, a bag of them should be more than adequate for a fat Northman wrapped in sealskins.
Hold the phone. Did you catch that? This is the second time the offer of sending heads in payment for crimes by the crown is brought up, specifically Gregor Clegane's head. It's pretty clear that the false dwarf heads that Cersei is receiving are being used to make peace in various places, an incredible manipulation. According to Wikipedia, which is basically fact,
the most recognizable and most common form of dwarfism in humans is achondroplasia, which accounts for 70% of dwarfism cases and occurs in 4 to 15 out of 100,000 live births. In achondroplasia, the body's limbs are proportionately shorter than the abdominal area, with a larger head than average and characteristic facial features.
Later in the story, we are introduced to Sir Robert Strong, a huge, silent knight dedicated completely to guarding Cersei and bringing down her enemies. In the show, he is shown as Undead Gregor, whom Qyburn has treated, and offers the same duty to Cersei. In the books, Sir Robert Strong has not been explicitly recognized as Gregor, and after his horrifically painful poisoning by Oberyn Martell, most assume the mountain is dead, but who else could it be with that massive size? A very clever trick by Cersei and Qyburn, showing both impressive and controversial skills by Qyburn. Sir Davos Seaworth is taken captive by Wyman Manderly in A Dance with Dragons when King Stannis sends him to White Harbor to treat with the portly lord and join him to Stannis' cause. There are several Freys present at the meeting in the great hall called the Mermans Court. The Freys speak of Robb Stark warging into a great beast at the Red Wedding, he and his bannermen abominations and betrayers. They state Manderly's eldest son and heir, Wendell, died a hero, defending their cousin Jingle Bells and Lord Walder himself. Wyman seems to accept this story with vigor, regardless of how foolish it all sounds. Davos names Jared Frey a liar and says never trust a Frey. While Davos is presenting his cause for Stannis, Wyman's granddaughter Wyla gives a rousing speech beseeching her grandfather to remain loyal to the Starks. If Stannis will avenge the Starks, they should align with him.
I know about the promise, insisted the girl. Maester Theomore, tell them. 1,000 years before the conquest, a promise was made, and oaths were sworn in the wolves' den before the old gods and the new. When we were sore beset and friendless, hounded from our homes and in peril of our lives, the wolves took us in and nourished us and protected us against our enemies. The city is built upon the land they gave us. In return, we swore that we should always be their men, Stark men.
Wyman is not moved. He takes Davos prisoner and orders his execution.
Take this creature to the wolf's den and cut off his head and hands. I want them brought to me before I sup. I shall not be able to eat a bite until I see this smuggler's head upon a spike with an onion between his lying teeth.
If we have noticed, Wyman orders Davos immediate execution upon their first meeting. However, we know he sent a letter to the crown informing them that they have Davos prisoner and will act at their behest. Davos is taken to a cell for an extended period of time. It's comfortable and accommodating, and he is well fed. After a time, a man who is not the usual jailer enters, who turns out to be Robert Glover, brother to Galbert Glover, Lord of Deepwood Mott. Robert hurriedly escorts him to a secret meeting room deep within the castle. Wyman awaits him and explains his reasons for the imprisonment.
Drink to my boy's safe return, Willis, my eldest son and heir. He's home. That is the welcoming feast you hear. In the Mermans Court, they're eating lamprey pie and venison with roasted chestnuts.
Wyman explains that Lord Tywin wrote to him to inform him that he had his second son Willis captive, and if he wished to have him freed unharmed, he must repent his treason, yield his city, and declare for King Tommen, and bend his knee to Roose Bolton, the new warden of the north. If he refused, his people would suffer the same fate as the Rains of Castamere. Wyman agreed to bend the knee, but not until after Willis was returned to him, and that was where it was left when Tywin died. The Freys showed up in White Harbor shortly after to bring Wendell's bones home as an act of good faith, but have stayed to ensure White Harbor remains loyal to the crown. They have secured marriage pacts with his granddaughters to keep Wyman leal. Wyman killing Davos, as the crown ordered, was the perfect opportunity to prove his loyalty.
My son Wendell came to the twins a guest. He ate Lord Walder's bread and salt and hung his sword upon the wall to feast with friends, and they murdered him. Murdered, I say, and may the Freys choke upon their fables. I drink with Jared, jape with Simon, promise Rhaegar the hand of my own beloved granddaughter, but never think that I have forgotten. The North remembers, Lord Davos, the North remembers, and the mummers' farce is almost done. My son is home.
As agreed, Wyman's son Willis was sent home in order to secure fealty from White Harbor. Very soon there will be a wedding in Winterfell, and Wyman must attend in order to pledge fealty to Roose Bolton. There is reason for the crown to be diligent in getting this agreement from Lord Manderly. He has the largest fleet of warships, along with more hidden upriver on the White Knife. He has the most heavy horse north of the Neck, 12 petty lords, and 100 landed knights, swollen coffers from being the largest port in the north, 2 minor castles, Old Castle and Widow's Watch, who take their lead from White Harbor, as well as all the lands east of the White Knife from Sheep's Head Hills south, which is their large chunk of the north. Unbeknownst to the crown, Wyman offers fealty to Stannis if Davos can meet his price. He presents a boy who is Wex, Theon Greyjoy's squire. He was at Winterfell and witnessed everything, including Ramsay Bolton putting every man to the sword, rounding up women to take them back to the Dreadfort for his hunting games, and burning Winterfell. Wex hid in the Godswood Heart Tree for several days until he chanced upon seeing Bran and Rickon and their wolves with Osha, Hodor, Mira, and Jojen. He saw 2 go one way and 4 another. He followed Rickon and Osha and knows where they went. Wyman needs a smuggler, not a king, to get what he needs. Davos must do it for King Stannis.
Roose Bolton has Lord Eddard's daughter. To thwart him, White Harbor must have Ned's son and the direwolf. The wolf will prove the boy is who we say he is, should the Dreadfort attempt to deny him. That is my price, Lord Davos. Smuggle me back, my liege lord, and I will take Stannis Baratheon as my king.
Wex throws a dagger at a map and shows Davos where he saw Rickon and Osha go. It is Skagos, a northern island of ill repute. Dangerous, stormy, rocky coasts, and queer, shaggy horned goats and cannibals. The next portion is also quite thick with deceptive action. This is based on the Prince of Winterfell chapter in A Dance with Dragons, told from Theon's point of view. The Northern Lords gather in Winterfell to attend Ramsay Snow's wedding to Arya Stark, who is actually Jeyne Poole in disguise. Jeyne is the daughter of the former Steward of Winterfell. She was taken in King's Landing when Eddard Stark and his household were killed. Since that time, she was kept in one of Littlefinger's brothels and trained how to please a man. She bears scars on her back from being whipped. In the earlier small council meeting, Cersei, in passing, thinks of her as some steward's whelp that Littlefinger had gotten a hold of, and is aware of her being sent to the Boltons. Jeyne is pretty and brunette, and no one in Winterfell has seen Arya since she was a child, so it's unlikely she would be recognized as false. The one person in Winterfell who does recognize her is Theon, but he's a good reek and doesn't say anything. Theon is scrubbed and dressed and made to walk Arya down the aisle. He's the closest to living kin Arya would have there. Theon is being used to put a face to the deception. Roose, at the very least, knows that this is a fake Arya. Theon lived in Winterfell with Arya, so he would definitely recognize a farce. If he's seen by the lords as accepting of this Arya, they would have no reason to question her identity. Wyman Manderly travels by boat and litter to attend the wedding and pledge fealty to Roose Bolton. He also furnishes the food for the great wedding feast. Wyman is in an incredibly jovial mood, serving food himself, drinking heartily, laughing and japing. There were cod cakes and winter squash and neeps, great wheels of cheese, mutton and beef ribs charred black, and 3 great wedding pies as wide across as wagon wheels, with flaky crust stuffed to bursting with carrots, onions, turnips, parsnips, mushrooms, and chunks of seasoned pork swimming in a savory brown gravy.
Ramsay hacked off slices with his falchion, and Wyman Manderly himself served, presenting the first steaming portion to Roose Bolton and his fat Frey wife, the next to Sir Hostine and Sir Aenys, the sons of Walder Frey. "The best pie you've ever tasted, my lords," the fat lord declared. "Wash it down with arbor gold and savor every bite. I know I shall." True to his word, Manderly devoured 6 portions, 2 from each of the 3 pies, smacking his lips and slapping his belly until the front of his tunic was half brown with gravy stains and his beard was flecked with crumbs of crust.
Theon sits with Lady Barbary Dustin for the feast. Barbary is the Lady of Barrowton, as well as sister-in-law to Roose Bolton, as her sister was Roose's late wife. There's an interesting dynamic between Roose and Barbary. She does not love or trust Roose, but makes common cause with him to achieve her own ends. Roose works to keep her sweet, as she could be an inconvenience by aligning herself against the Boltons. Barbary was also very fond of Roose's late son, Domeric, who died unexpectedly, and likely by some foul play by Ramsay. She does have her own suspicions about the whole wedding situation. In a later chapter, she asks Theon to take her down to the crypts of Winterfell. She tells him of when she was younger. Barbary was lover to Brandon Stark, and they wished to marry each other until Rickard Stark made arrangements for Brandon to marry Catelyn Tully of Riverrun. This broke Barbary's heart. Her father attempted to create a marriage with Eddard, but Catelyn got him as well. She married Lord Willem Dustin, but within half a year, Ned had called the banners for the imprisonment of Lord Rickard and Brandon in King's Landing, causing Willem to leave her. He was killed at the Tower of Joy, and his bones never returned, though his horse was. She is bitter that Lyanna's bones were returned and laid to rest, and means to intercept Ned's bones should they ever make it past the neck, and feed them to her dogs. She tells Theon they have something in common. They both hate and love the Starks because they wanted to be one but never could. During the wedding feast, Barbary broods over the guests. She tells Theon that Wyman Manderly is a fat, craven fool. She observes his jolly demeanor and his japes with the other lords, and questions his choice to marry his granddaughters to Freys.
Ironborn will feast before a battle too, a last taste of life should death await. If Stannis comes, he will. He must. Lady Dustin chuckled. And when he does, the fat man will piss himself. His son died at the Red Wedding, yet he's shared bread and salt with the Freys, welcomed them beneath his roof, promised one his granddaughter. He even serves them pie. The Manderlys ran from the south once, hounded from their lands and keeps by enemies. Blood runs true. The fat man would like to kill us all, I do not doubt, but he does not have the belly for it, for all his girth. Under that sweaty flesh is a heart as craven and cringing as, well, yours. Her last word was a lash, but Theon dares not answer back in kind. Any insolence would cost him his skin. If my lady believes Lord Manderly wants to betray us, Lord Bolton is the one to tell. You think Roose does not know? Silly boy. Watch him. Watch how he watches Manderly. No dish so much as touches Roose's lips until he sees Lord Wyman eat it first. No cup of wine is sipped until he sees Manderly drink of the same cask. I think he would be pleased if the fat man attempted some betrayal. It would amuse him. Roose has no feelings, you see. Those leeches he loves so well sucked all the passions out of him years ago. He does not love, he does not hate, he does not grieve. This is a game to him, mildly diverting. Some men hunt, some men hawk, some tumble dice. Roose plays with men. You and me, these Freys, Lord Manderly, his plump new wife, even his bastard, we are but his playthings. A serving man was passing by. Lady Dustin held out her wine cup and let him fill it, and gestured for him to do the same for Theon.
After the feast, Roose gathers his lords and captains to a solar to discuss Stannis' impending attack and battle strategies. Reek had learned that Arnulf Karstark simply waits a signal from Roose to turn his cloak on Stannis. Hother Umbar is scowling and grim as he heads into the meeting. Lady Barbary attends. Wyman is so drunk on Arbor Gold that it takes 4 of his own men to help him stagger to the meeting, though he is still quite full of vim and vigor.
We should have a song about the rat cook, he was muttering as he staggered past Theon, leaning on his knights. Singer! Give us a song about the rat cook.
In case you're not familiar with the story of the rat cook, it takes place at the Night Fort along the Wall, a haunted and frightening castle with many a scary story coming from it. According to this story, an old Andal king came to visit the castle with his son. He somehow offended the cook at the Night Fort, and the cook killed the prince and cooked him into the pie. He served the pie to the king, who loved it so much he asked for a second helping. When they found out the prince was killed and eaten, the gods were so offended that they turned the cook into a rat and cursed him to eat his own babies until the end of time. The gods were not offended at the murder or that the cursed pie made the king a cannibal, but that the cook violated guest right and killed the prince after they were given bread and salt of the castle. Wyman is sending his message loud and clear. In case you haven't caught on, there are dead Freys in that wedding pie. Lord Manderly brought musicians with him, but they did not include a singer. Happenstance came Abel and his 6 washerwomen, which he claimed were sisters and daughters. Abel played a lute and knew many southern songs, so he and his women stayed to play for the wedding. Abel is actually Mance Rayder, sent from the wall by Jon Snow and Melisandre to rescue Arya. Melisandre sees a vision in the flames of a gray girl on a dying horse heading to the wall, and they both believe it is Arya. Mance offers to rescue her in exchange for his son, though Mance is unaware that his son has actually been sent with Gilly down to Old Town for the baby's protection from Melisandre and her love of Kingsblood. It is well known that Mance knows all the songs from the Wall to Dorne and then some. The washerwomen are spearwives from the wildlings. The women seek out Theon to make efforts for him to help them free Jeyne. They offer to free him as well and get him away from Ramsay, but Theon is so distrustful at this point that he believes they'll get caught or Ramsay sent them as a trick. Later in the story, we see Theon help Jeyne escape with their help, though none of the washerwomen survive the ordeal. Mance survives and is referenced later in the Pink Letter, but as Ramsay's prisoner, depending on who you believe wrote the Pink Letter. There are some who speculate that Wyman Manderly is aware of Mance Rayder's presence and disguise, and that is given credence with the songs that Wyman requests. I do believe that Wyman knows that Arya is also fake. We made a delicious Frey Pie for our dish today. This was my family's Christmas dinner, so that was really nice and hearty. It was my first time using parsnips, which are now literally my favorite vegetable. So please excuse my cutting skills in this. They weren't amazing. It was my first time cutting a parsnip and they're a little awkward. And I was actually thinking of doing a video to show you guys how to cut one if that's something that you would be interested in. I slow cooked a pork tenderloin with some cranberries, onion, and garlic, and some chicken broth and red wine. And then I simmered all the vegetables and packed it all in a pie crust, and it turned out delicious, perfect for a cold winter night. At the risk of this video running over an hour long, we have decided to bring you the next portions of the story in another episode. We won't keep you waiting long, and we'll bring you another amazing pie recipe from the story in the next one. Winter is here, and everyone caught in the recent weather needs as many pie recipes as possible to keep the long night at bay. You may be starting to notice a pattern with the usage of pie, and we have called this idea a Frey Pies. We will also give you what we promised, a deceptive story from Fire and Blood tying into our theme. We appreciate you watching our video. Please like and subscribe for our next treat to come right to you while it's fresh. We highly recommend the Geek Chat 1 channel on YouTube and the Geek Chat 1 group on Facebook for all things fun and nerdy.